phone silence.
So I'm sitting here with a friend of mine, David Boyer. He's a statesman. He's done a lot for me, and I've learned a lot. There's a way to get along in politics, and there's a way not to, and he showed me how to get along. He's a libertarian independent, running as a Republican. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay. Running as a Republican. He does a good job in Augusta. He's pushed some bills across the finish line. He's a industry leader with the cannabis movement. He worked for Ron Paul, yep. I get Ron kind of jacked up. And he's willing to sit down with me for 20 minutes today, and I'd like to thank you.
Absolutely. How you doing?
I'm well, thanks. So this is a free form. Anything goes. There's a lot to talk about. Shanna Bellows. We have the 20th of this month coming up. We have a couple of cannabis bills. One of them's yours.
Yep.
If you want to talk about that, we're more than willing. It's to open a lounge, cannabis lounge. Work towards that. 1840 still on the back burner. 1840 changed 24 pieces of regulation within the cannabis industry. That one's still on the back burner. There's a lot going on. There's always something going on in Augusta. We also have the governor's bill with the hemp products. That's a touchy subject. There's 3 industries here in Maine, if you're not familiar with it. There's the hemp industry, the medical cannabis industry, and the recreational industry. And the more you divide them, the more they bicker, I guess is fair. And it causes a lot of turmoil when they should be united. And I think one of the best terms I've heard is, instead of making one more shitty, why don't we make one less shitty? And if we're going to have a legal, in my opinion, this is my opinion, if we're going to have a legal business in Maine, we should let them be a legal business in Maine and not look at them like a piggy bank, that we should just be poking more money out of them all the time to fund special projects and special interests.
Yeah, the cannabis growers are having a tough time with especially the illegal organized crime grows that have sprung up over the last couple of years. That's the fourth market, right? It's the illicit, the underground market, and all these different markets affect each other, and it's caused the price to go down. And you have regulations and taxes that
High electrical costs
and high energy costs that the illicit grows. They don't even pay for the light bill, right? So. But when you have 10-20% tax, you have burdensome regulations that are not grounded or rooted in science or common sense. For example, as you know, they have to test the flower in a pre-roll. They have to test the joint after they roll it with tested cannabis flower. This all adds the cost for the business, which adds to the cost for the consumer, and makes it really hard to compete with the guys not following the rules.
Well, along those lines, so the VLA was supposed to get together over the summer, and maybe this is a touchy subject, but they were supposed to get together and talk about the parts per million mold and mildew, and is it chemicals as well? I think it was just mold and mildew spores count, because there's some controversy there about whether or not, 10,000
CFUs, colony forming units.
And then, in all fairness, I sit on the committee. However, I'm not well versed in the cannabis world. So David has been around it for a long time, and again was an advocate early on with the cannabis stuff. So I defer. A lot of it, the numbers are going to escape me. So it was how many parts per?
Sure. So. What you're talking about is there's a couple bills to address testing regarding total yeast for mold and mildew. When you eat some grapes from the grocery store, you might see some mold. You don't run to the CDC or anything like that. You just eat around it. You throw it out. These are everywhere. It's in everything, and so the science is not clear. Where is that threshold for harmfulness? And also, if you light it, you combust it, there's some evidence that gets, rid of it. But currently our adult use cannabis laws say you can't have any mold or mildew over that 10,000 CFUs.
And everything gets tested multiple times through the process too. So if you're manufacturing with it, cooking with it, making distillates with it, it has to be checked every process. The same
Yeah,
flour.
mostly. And then also, mold can, when you have something in a bag and it's on a shelf for a time, I mean, that changes it as well. But other states started at 10,000 as well, but have since moved to 100,000 colony forming units.
Any issues?
We haven't really seen any issues in those states, and it would also help make outdoor growing viable. So, there's not that many outdoor adult use cannabis producers because of this really low limit for mold and mildew.
Now, I would think, and I don't mean to keep interrupting,
Sure.
but just trying to get it out as it comes to me. I would think that if you're growing outside, the ground must be full of, bacteria and just healthy organisms, to include mold and mildew, all that stuff. And then it would then get on the plant, which would be healthy, right? Microorganisms on your plant. I know that here in my garden, we add stuff to encourage it, and we have a no-till process in one of our gardens as to not disrupt the microorganisms, so we have more of them in our garden.
Yeah, no, indoor grows, you get to play God. You get to have all the settings and, the moisture, the temperature, the light, the time. Outdoor is a little less predictable and controllable. So, and a lot of people like the living soil, like you're talking about. And, part of that conversation we were having was regarding the microbials, and there's harmful ones and not so harmful ones. And so our testing regime should keep that in mind and call for speciated testing where the limit is against the harmful microbials. So there's only one or two, I think, outdoor grows in Maine because of that. And if they do, grow outdoors, to get under this limit to pass tests, they actually, radiate their cannabis. They run it, or they ozonate it and use an ozone machine to make the mold non-detectable. So,
Is there any other industries that use that type of radiation?
yeah, our farmers, apple farmers and different.
No consequence?
They say it's safe. There's some evidence that the radiation can mess with some of the terpenes of the cannabis.
Which is flavor?
Flavor, or also like kind of the good stuff, the medicine to some degree. So if we don't have to zap, our weed, I think that would be better ideally, and still keep public health and safety and preserve that. But these other states went to 100,000 CFUs, and there's nobody's turning up dead or anything like that because of it. And then you think about just our whole food system. If we can't grow cannabis outside, because of mold and mildew, then what about the food that we eat? So it doesn't pass the straight face test. We've been smoking cannabis for tens of thousands of years, and it hasn't been tested. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't have some testing, but it needs to be workable for businesses, and it needs to have some common sense. Like you're making folks test for pesticides that they don't use, that they know they don't use. Maybe that's where the state can come in and, do some audit testing, and they can, make sure people aren't using bad pesticides. But to pay every batch of every test for every strain for pesticides you don't use, that gets expensive quick.
So how much would it cost for a cannabis producer, somebody who grows and then makes other products with it, say edibles, gummies, I don't know what other products, vapes, so how much would they harvest a plant, they test it, they go to make a batch of cookies, they test it again, correct? If they go to make a vape, they test it again. Now, do they have to test the cookie after it's made?
They want final form testing as well.
How much does it wind up costing total for a plant and testing?
I think a panel costs about $500. So
each panel, each time you test, it's $500.
Yeah, and then so this, this testing regime kind of discourages multiple products, because if you have more strains and you have less, flower amount for them, and so the bigger guys are just doing one big room rather than smaller rooms with different strains because it costs more, for each strain. So it really just it's bad for the patient. It's bad for the consumer. It discourages choice and options and kind of pushes people into this one box of scaling up and only offering a smattering of products. And like heavy metals, for example, too, that's probably something that should be tested for. But your water, your water source is your water source. Maybe we can test for that once every 6 months or once every year.
I think most people test their water once every time they try to refinance or sell their house or buy a house.
Right. So, and then the state is holding up small cannabis growers to regulations that not even the biggest food players, have to adhere by. You hear about chocolate having lots of heavy metals in it, and
I would think wine.
arsenic.
They don't irradiate grapes before they make wine. I believe that yeast and mold on the outside of the grape helps with flavor in the wine.
Yeah, what's the mandated testing for our small craft breweries for their heavy metals in their beer? They use water, right?
So where does this stand now? If memory serves correctly, and this is all public record, that bill that was to change the testing and how it was tested from the numbers again.
They put
It was ought not to pass. Went to the House floor. Ought not to pass based on the fact that we were going to discuss it. The VLA was going to discuss it over the summer and come up with some sort of resolution.
Well, we passed Senator Tipping's bill, which talked about the redundant testing, but then that got a big fiscal note from the administration. So for those that don't know, a fiscal note is what is put on a bill if it costs the state money or generates the state, revenue.
And it's a way to get a bill not to pass, even if it's...
The executive branch has a lot of sway in setting that number and is unfortunately kind of abused, and they'll put a fiscal note on a bill they don't want to pass, or they'll leave a fiscal note off for a bill that they do want to pass. So that happened to that bill. It got further amended to, I think, only dealing with edibles, if I remember correctly. So it got further watered down.
Do you remember the exact details of that bill? Because I don't.
Not off the top.
It's funny, you get caught up in the legislature and you know every little aspect, and then you walk away from it for 6 months and you get involved in all the other things in your life and you kind of forget about those.
Yeah, and all the LD numbers blend together.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was happening the last couple of days of the session and the Appropriations Committee in that process, where good bills go to die, unfortunately. So we're coming back, like you said, on the 20th to talk about whether or not adults should have a ability to consume cannabis with other people in a public setting. We already kind of do that with these hemp drinks. The toothpaste is kind of out of the bottle here. That you can buy these hemp drinks at bars even now. You can use alcohol and these, and there hasn't really been anything to point to that said this is not safe, it's not working. So hopefully adults, think about tourists too. We're a tourist state, and they buy adult use cannabis because maybe they're from a country or a state where it's not legal. Where are they supposed to consume? They can't do it at their hotel or their Airbnb. They can't do it at the place they bought it. You're not allowed to smoke in public. They're going to choose one of these places.
I kind of, with the THC thing, I can't help but think of, because I heard it explained very well the other day. I was listening to somebody talking about it, and they said, basically it's the same thing. If you were to test the THC from a hemp drink and the THC from a cannabis drink, you really wouldn't know the difference. The THC is THC. So with that being said, if you can age gate it, make it 21 or older, why couldn't you sell a cannabis-produced product in a regulated store other than a dispensary? Why couldn't you put that in gas station over 21 stores, liquor stores, smoke shops where they're selling, Delta 9 vape pens and THC drinks? Why couldn't you? And then I think to myself, well, is there harm coming from the THC hemp drinks? And other than anecdotally that I've heard once, I've seen nor heard nothing, and I have no evidence. Do you have any evidence of any harm coming from these drinks?
Not really, and especially since the legislature age gated the hemp drinks. I think the reason we don't have it is stigma, right? You know, these need to be in their own stores and all that good stuff. But you know, people, they want to, you know, gripe about how many cannabis stores there are, and you know, they're all next to each other and they're everywhere.
Beer
You
in
pass
every
one
corner
every
store.
day. You know, think about beer and wine, and think about if we said, okay, you can only buy your beer and wine at the beer and wine store.
The Packy store.
You can't buy it at the grocery store. You can't buy it at the gas station or the 7-Eleven. And they're going to have your own separate. There'd be a lot of those stores too. I bet there'd be more than the cannabis stores. Our society has a really messed up relationship with alcohol, I think, and we're more than fine to, you know, ignore the real harm it does to our bodies, to our society, to families, and we celebrate it. We are fine with commercials, flashy commercials during the Super Bowl. No one bats an eye that a 12-year-old might see a Coors Light TV ad or billboard, but the moment somebody tries to advertise a plant, you know, the sky is going to fall. So I think we have a real kind of our values are messed up, and not to say that cannabis is not without its harms. It's a substance like anything else, but objectively, alcohol is more harmful than cannabis. It has a toxicity point, right? You can't smoke yourself to death using cannabis, but you can most certainly get overdose poisoning, alcohol poisoning, and die from consuming too much alcohol.
So for the first time ever, too, the polling or the data shows that people smoke more cannabis than they drink nowadays, or use cannabis. Maybe not smoke; it could be edible, but they use cannabis more than they drink now. And liquor sales, beer, spirits, wine, have all declined nationwide. And it's all these states legalizing cannabis, which, you know, it is what it is. But I guess my only stigma with cannabis is working in the trades when you have a guy on the job site who says it's my medicine, and he's stoned for 45 minutes and he's flipping the same board over 20 times trying to figure out which direction to put it. And it's happened. My only gripe. But then again, I've seen guys come in to have a pocket full of little nips, those little 50 mil bottles, and they, you know, sneak one in here or there to try to take the edge off and keep going. Is he any safer? I mean, there's an argument here. That's just from my perspective as a guy. You know, I was a drinker, I'm not a drinker, and I'm not a smoker. That's my perspective from what I see. I think I figure if you're going to make something legal, make it legal. You're in for a penny or a pound. And the arguments you get back and forth from it, you know, it's against federal law. Well, again, in for a penny, in for a pound. You're already breaking federal law. You're selling weed in the state. So what the hell does it matter now?
Yeah.
You might as well make it convenient, make it easy, and let these growers make some money. And that's my thought with the 21 and older stores. If they could produce the product in their shop, and then be able to distribute it out through one of the distributors and or self-distribute, just like craft beer, and bring it into these stores and sell it. And a lot of people, the stigma, they don't want to go to a dispensary. They want to go to a convenience store. They want to be able to, because there's no, and oddly enough, there's no stigma going into a liquor store, but there is going into a dispensary.
Absolutely. Yeah, a doctor has no, you know, qualms. You know, most doctors, I guess, would have no qualms going into a liquor store and coming out with a bottle of wine or bourbon. But you're right, and a lot of people are using these hemp drinks as a alcohol substitute. They might be in recovery. Putting aside your opinions whether or not you can use cannabis and be in recovery or hemp drinks or whatever, they're, you know, some kind of harm reduction maybe where they just want to, you know, not use alcohol and be in a social setting or not feel, you know, kind of weird about it. It's tough when you're not drinking and trying to socialize, and especially if you're newly, you know, sober and in recovery. It can be really tough. So the idea that we're gonna take a product that's available in 100% of municipalities in the state, including, you know, something that you can ship in over the internet to an individual, to your own house, the idea that we're going to take this product and move it to 19% of municipalities that have opted into adult use. That's not right. It's not right for the people that buy and sell it now. It's not, and those folks won't, for whatever reason, go into a cannabis store, whether it's because they're a lawyer or doctor on the PTA, or they're a gun owner and they think, they can't consume alcohol or cannabis and have a firearm, and they think there's a list. They're, thankfully in Maine, our patient registry we don't have the state doesn't have a list of all the patients. We know that there's over 100,000 cannabis patients in Maine, which is pretty crazy when you think about how many people in Maine we have. A large portion do have their card, but there's no list of those patients in Maine or gun owners in Maine, thankfully. So,
one of the things I did learn sitting on the VLA that really amazed me was the amount of attention, courtesy, and care that comes from the medical marijuana people. That was, we have a person that sits on our committee with us who is a part of the medical cannabis world. And I was really shocked at how much they cared, because I'm used to standard health care. I go to the VA and nobody gives two shits. Just don't. And most hospitals, it's now a revolving door, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
It feels like
15 minutes and that's it. What's your ailment? There you go. Get out, move on. But they actually care, and it's pretty wild to see. And I really support the medical cannabis to a degree. I still have my issues at work, but that's me.
No, I mean, I think because these providers have seen people benefit for,
I have too.
The difference between cannabis and alcohol, one can be used as a medicine. Maybe there's some health benefits, drinking a glass of red wine, once a week or something. But like, people aren't having, drinking to help them sleep through the night, unless they're drinking a lot.
Passed out.
They're really
How's that guy?
They're not having one drink to help them sleep. But, so many people we know and that people know, pop a gummy, just to sleep through the night, and it's really helped them. They've gotten off of opiates using cannabis, and people addicted to pills, and then consolidating their pills, going from a handful to one or two a day to zero, all through just using cannabis. So when you see that, it's hard to ignore those results when you're intimately involved in seeing a patient recover. You think about the epilepsy kids. We've had medical for so long here in Maine that we haven't really, there hasn't been a lot of news about all the people that have benefited from it. There used to be more attention to it, but between the kids, between people with substance abuse, mental health, cannabis helps a lot of people get through the day in a way that is much safer in regards to side effects compared to pharmaceuticals.
I was shocked. The first time I ever heard of it was the kids that were having seizures. What do they call it? Grand mal seizures. And they would
their brain literally turns off.
Yeah, and they put the tincture in their gums and they'd come right out of it. That's pretty amazing.
And they're getting high. It's like maybe they're getting high, maybe they're not. Even if they are, what's
having a seizure.
What's worse for your brain? Being shut off, or having dozens of seizures in a day. There's an old school YouTube video, a guy with Parkinson's, shaking all about, and he takes one ball hit and he steadies out. I mean, it's amazing.
A lot of guys, being a veteran, combat veteran, a lot of guys I know use it for PTSD and to calm anxiety. I do not understand that one because it does quite the opposite for me. It makes me a nut job. So I prefer not to, but they seem to, and they react well with it, and they function well. They're able to do things. Myself, I would curl up in a fetal position and close the blinds and turn off the phone and suck my thumb. But yeah, other guys, not so much. It's
not for everybody, but if it works, it works. And, again, not without its harms. It can be habit forming and, stuff like that. But
I've talked about it before. My big thing is Ibogaine. I really am seriously curious about it. I've listened to this other guy just the other day, Pete Scorbell. I might be messing up his last name. He was a Navy SEAL guy, and he was a mobility officer at the end of his career, but he saw a lot of things, did a lot of stuff. and was able to take ibogaine. Went down, did ibogaine, tells his story about it, and it's just amazing to think that, you carry all this baggage and you never dump it, and it blocks up neural pathways in your mind. And to be able to take something like that, or even microdosing, I've read a ton about microdosing lately because I've been talking to you about it since the day we met because I'm curious. And then, for me, the only thing that's scary is I'm so used to being this guy that I couldn't imagine what it's like to be normal. So,
Well, there is no normal, and but it can be quite powerful, facing your ego and getting down to the brass tacks with yourself through these medicines. I hope we can push towards these natural medicines like psilocybin and ayahuasca, and there's other ones as well, like you said. And we had the opportunity in our committee to allow for the decriminalization of mushrooms, of psilocybin. Unfortunately, the Democrats they didn't want to do it. I think there was more Republicans that were open to doing it than Democrats, at least on the committee. And then we actually did have that House vote floor, and the floor vote. We won the first one, then we lost. So it was really tight. I think about 10 Republicans came with us on that. And at the end of the day, I'm for small government, less government, and using government, the force of government, to go after someone that has using mushrooms for whatever reason, really doesn't seem like a good use of tax dollars. There's bigger fish to fry, and especially if they're getting some kind of help from it.
Have you ever heard a horror story from somebody on mushrooms?
Oh, I'm sure I've heard of one or two bad trips.
Not on mushrooms, LSD, other stuff, but never mushrooms. And then I think I'm probably talking out my ass, but I want to say in order to eat enough to kill you, you have to eat like 50 pounds or some silly thing. You have to eat a lot of them before...
Your whole weight or something. Yeah, I think it's pretty much impossible.
I wish I had a person that sat off to the side that could Google it for me. And
we need
real quick, a Jamie from the road.
You need a Jamie.
So on a different note, did you introduce any bills this year for this upcoming January session?
I didn't put any bills in. I kind of wanted to focus on the ones that I still have a couple hanging over. And as you know, with this second session, it's the emergency session. So the Legislative Council has to approve any bills that we put in. That means you pretty much have to get at least one Democrat or two Democrats to vote with the Republicans to make it 6-4 in support. I didn't have any bright ideas that I thought could a Democrat would go for this session that would constitute an emergency. So I'm focused on the bills ahead of us and what we have, and we have the other bill that we're talking about on the 20th is to bring the federal background checks into the Maine cannabis, so that right now we're doing only Maine background checks, but we're allowing people from out of state to become Maine caregivers because of the U.S. Constitution and the Commerce Clause. So at the least we could do is check people on a national list to make sure they're not prohibited. We have a lot of folks from New York that John Hudak has given registrations to become caregivers. So maybe we can slow down the proliferation of our illegal grows, quasi-legal grows, I guess I'd say, by expanding the background checks. But it's really an issue what our state government's done with these illegal grows. First they said it's a law enforcement issue. They're not in the program. We have no authority. And then they gave them licenses, and then they said, it's a law enforcement issue. So it doesn't make any sense. They aren't following the law. The Office of Cannabis Policy has the power to go into these grows to check for pesticide use, to do an inspection. They're not. They just want to mandate it for everyone else too, and pay those extra costs. But state doesn't want to do it themselves when we know there's nasty pesticides being used.
And I know some of those OCP enforcement agents, and believe me, they'd love to kick in the door and start up a bunch of mess. And then it shocks me that it's only the sheriffs and municipalities that are enforcing any of these cannabis or the illegal illicit grow facilities. They're the only ones putting a stop to it. I haven't seen the state police. The governor hasn't said a word, nothing.
I can't believe Janet Mills hasn't uttered one word about
running for office.
these illegal grows. Maybe she has to now that she's going to be running for U.S. Senate. But she tried to sink the legalization campaign in 2016. She had she had an interesting interpretation of question one back in 2016.
She was the
AG
General?
at the time, and she said, "The way it's written, the kids will be able to have cannabis, and there's nothing that we'll be able to do." It's because the way it removed penalties, they didn't put them back in, and so the legislature fixed it right away. And she just made it seem like an 8-year-old would be able to have cannabis, and adults couldn't, take a bag of weed away from a kid. So she's not a big fan of cannabis, and so I don't understand why she's okay with these illegal grows, taking away hundreds of starter homes for Maine families, taking these houses sometimes permanently off the market. And we'll see if it becomes a campaign issue. If Mr.
And we're back.
It's crazy, Quentin, that Governor Mills hasn't said one thing about these illegal grows. I mean, they've taken hundreds of starter homes off the market, sometimes permanently, the way they're left with the mold and the pesticides. We know the governor's not a big fan of weed. She tried to sink the campaign back in 2016 with an October surprise. So it just really doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Hopefully it'll become a campaign issue with her running for U.S. Senate. But the idea that her brother is doing title work, Paul Mills is doing title work for these organized crime.
Outside of his area of operation, too.
And the legacy media hasn't mentioned
one more
Paul Mills once. It really begs the question.
Now, how? I knew it at one point, but it's gone now. How did the Chinese illegals get a license and become legal grow operators? How does that happen? If I remember right, they got a front person to come in, and we just turn a blind eye knowing it was the Chinese because it's the same locations.
Well, there's just no prohibition on out of state.
That was that background check you would.
And the background checks might knock off a couple of them for having some kind of prohibited.
But you would have had to
disqualifying offense. Right now, because currently we're only doing the Maine background check. So hopefully we can pass Representative Frederick's bill to expand that to federal background checks. I'm open to other legislative solutions. I've challenged OCP, who says their hands are tied, to come up with any ideas on how they can show a little more discretion in who they give caregiver registrations to. Haven't really heard much from them on that front. If other folks have ideas that are constitutional and legal, then I'm all for it. In the meantime, what we should be doing as a legislature, as regulators, is just making it easier for the legal folks to compete.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put them out of business. If we're not going to enforce the laws on the books, you and I don't have control of that. We have control of the laws as lawmakers, but the executive branch is the one that enforces the laws. And it seems like the executive branch is perfectly fine with organized crime here in Maine. It really feels like state police has a stand-down order. It really feels like...
Sure does.
It really begs the question, what's going on?
And I just want to revisit this one. So if my name's Dickie and I live at 123 Main Street and I get, say the sheriff shake me down for having an illegal grow, and then 2 months later I come back as Jimmy or my brother Jimmy, then applies for a license for medical cannabis to be able to grow at 123 Main Street, how in the world could somebody say, yeah, that makes sense, and then hand a license? That's where I'm confused, because this has happened on more than one occasion. Or it doesn't make sense. You'd think at that point right there, you'd go, well, I know you're not Jimmy, you're Dickie, or you're representing Dickie. I know who you are, but no recognition of the obvious.
I think we discussed that some, and I think part of it was like, okay, well, what if someone got caught and then this house goes on the market and or this, commercial
And then we
place
talk
goes,
about equity again.
or someone else just wants to do it there that isn't related to it. How do we, we were talking about putting like a 5-year ban on any address that, has been associated with illegal growing, and then
It's too bad you can't just apply common sense. Right? I mean, that would be the ultimate best answer. Well, Your Honor, he looked like one of the people that was arrested. I mean, he's his brother or whatever. Apply some sort of common
same
sense.
location.
Yeah, and it's full of toxic chemicals already anyway because they burn that pesticide, fungicide, like Eagle something or another. What the hell is that stuff?
Yeah, Eagle 20.
Thank you, Eagle 20, which there's no way to test for because it's been outlawed in America for the last 40 years. So there's no test for it. They don't think to test for it, but that's what they're using to fumigate their crops.
And I truly believe that, well, let me say, it definitely, the Chinese illegal grows definitely encourages folks to maybe look at the medical law and maybe make some changes there that aren't so good for the mom and pop growers. And feels like part of the reason maybe that these illegal grows are getting these registrations from OCP is because it can be used to further their narrative, right? And what's their narrative been? Their narrative is that Maine's medical marijuana program is the wild, wild west.
It needs to be regulated.
There's no tracking. It's the only state in the country where there's no testing of medical cannabis, and the horror.
Meanwhile, it is not everything they made it out to be through the 80s and the 90s. I've looked at frying pans my whole life and never thought that was my brain in there. I just made me hungry and wanted to eat an egg.
And it's just not true. We know that there's plenty of caregivers that do test, that care about their patients.
Yeah.
And so, but it fits their narrative. Look, we can't do anything. So the only thing we can do to stop the illegal growers, other than stop giving them licenses, is to bring in testing and tracking. So then we're going to test to make sure it's safe, and then they won't want to do that, so they'll pack up and go away, or they're not going to want to pay for the tracking, or we'll be able to know that they're illegal because we use this tracking software called Metric, which is used in other states that doesn't work, and that we know that the director has a relationship with the head of the Metric, and now we're going to mandate the software for thousands of more growers, and this private company is going to get more money and more revenue on the backs of hardworking small growers and mom and pop businesses. So that's
and the taxpayers, because the state of Maine buys those licenses too, right? I mean, the state of Maine pays Metric.
The contract, that went from $350 to what, $600. We had to change a part of the contract, and they want a couple more $100,000.
Meanwhile, every convenience store I go to has a different POS system, right? Some of them are tracking in the grocery stores, in the orchards, some of the farms. They track their product. And the state of Maine pays that company, that POS company, $0 to be here.
And contaminated food can kill you. There's no real evidence that moldy cannabis is going to kill you. So if we let food producers track their food with one of different tracking systems rather than this mandated one software, where the stakes are that much higher with food, why are we doing this with cannabis? It's just stigma. It's cannabis policy 1.0. And again, we know now that, John Hudak used to work with the head of Metric. And then he went and negotiated a contract change on behalf of the taxpayers of the state of Maine with his old buddy. He didn't recuse himself. He didn't, make any kind of public statement about their relationship. And that's why we, asked the GOC committee to investigate it. And
he was proven to find nothing wrong. You should watch that. That's pretty entertaining.
And they, didn't quite go exactly how I think we'd like or hope. Not that we hope for corruption, I guess, but I think it did show that there was a hole in their policies, that they didn't really have any kind of protocol on how to deal with conflicts of interest or when the right time to recuse yourself is. And if you do recuse yourself, why should you have to tell people you recuse yourself? I was like, well, the transparency, right? That's kind of the point of the recusal in the first place. So yeah, our cannabis industry has lots of challenges, and but I do feel like it's created almost, I think, 10,000 jobs, I think, in the state. I think it really is and has been the part of the bubble gum and duct tape that keeps our state's economy going, is because there's these caregivers are small businesses providing for their family and maybe one or two employees, and then
It provides them independence. It lets them be at home, take care of their children, become better parents.
not be on the system, not be one of the 420,000 people on assistance in our state. But that's going away. They're doing everything they can to ruin this program and this market.
And then a whole nother nut roll with the banking, which is hard to really bitch about that with the federal government. Still, it's illegal, but banking is I talked to somebody the other day who holds like 4 bank accounts, and they're always constantly maneuvering and trying to get things done because they're in the cannabis industry, and that's just the way it is, and they're medical. So it's even worse in medical than it is rec.
It's a mess. Some of them are moving towards ESOP, employee owned, because I guess there's a lot of tax benefits for
ESOP?
I think that's the acronym when you're employee owned business.
Oh, okay.
Like Moody's.
Is there a name for the actual company or the bank itself?
No, it's just how you organize your business.
Okay.
As an employee owned.
Oh, okay. I guess I don't know that much about it.
Yeah, so profit sharing, and employees get an ownership stake in the business, and somebody was telling me there's some real tax benefits by organizing that way.
So they're paying taxes too.
Oh yeah, I'm
Good
sure
point.
they're paying
Yeah, yeah.
taxes.
Yeah, a lot of taxes.
And they can't do
14%, yeah.
the deductions that other businesses do, the cost of goods deduction. They're not allowed to take that one.
No, and I just want to throw the Mills administration a bone right now, because they did make one policy change recently that I was head over heels about. They have dumped proficiency learning in our schools, which has been an abject failure. Locally here, it's a 97% graduation rate, but we're at like the bottom 80%. I think it's 32% read at a first or second grade proficiency level. It's just terrible, our school systems, as far as education. And they're going back to, get this, evidence-based learning. Evidence-based, meaning it's been tried and true and works every time.
What kind of learning was it before?
It was proficiency learning. And if you read into it, it said you didn't have to do the work.
Sounds like No Child Left Behind.
Yeah, similar. Yeah. So it had nothing to do with your class work, class time. It was, they proved themselves proficient to me, good enough, thumbs up, away you go.
There has to be a middle ground between, like, test meaning everything and teaching to pass the test and all that stuff, and then, what we have now, which seems like everybody gets a trophy.
Well, that's, so standardized testing isn't focused on as much anymore, but the classroom work is, and so that is teaching outside of the test. It's not to pass the test. So your homework, your in-class participation, the comprehension, all of that stuff. My wife could speak better to it. She's a teacher. But, the people who give a shit are head over heels that this is going away, because it's been...
They just announced that a couple days ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they realize that they're in trouble.
Yeah, an election season coming up.
Their candidates are going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Going from one of the best states for education to the worst in, less than 10 years, probably?
Yeah, we're the absolute bottom of the barrel, 50th in the nation for high school and K through 4, I think.
Which makes paying these property taxes hurt even more. It'd be one thing if, everyone was kicking butt.
Yeah.
But to, pay what we do and to have the results that we do, it feels wrong. People are really struggling, folks on fixed incomes. We were talking to a guy, he paid his house off 10 years ago or more. Last year everybody's on fixed income. He's out of money at the end of the month. He's going to the food pantry, ramen. And last year he took out a loan to pay his property taxes, and he doesn't want to do that this year. And it's like, this is when really bad, dark things happen, when people are, put in this position and feel this way. And it's a complete failure of our promise to the American worker, to seniors, that, just work hard. Social Security will be there for you. And It's not enough, whether it needs to be increased or if, ideally we need to bring costs down. And it's inflation. And inflation used to be a hidden tax. It isn't anymore.
No, it's in your face.
Hopefully people can make the next connection now. It's like, well, where's the inflation from? The printing of the money. And we did so much of it during COVID, during the stimulus, during the bailouts. Our money supply has gone to the moon. So we have to get back to sound money, some kind of tie it to something. It doesn't have to be gold. It could be the price of bananas or anything, but right now they get to keep printing money out of thin air, and the people that spend it first get to spend it before it devalues. So all the businesses and corporations and other countries that get our money when it comes off the printing press, it spends a little better for them, and then by the time it makes its way down to us, inflation's kicked in, and now, as you see on the news, $50,000 is now $100,000, from just 5-6 years ago.
Yep, buying power.
With the buying power, and the other thing that the printing machine does is it finances our foreign interventionism. If we had to, fund our defense budget, which I guess now is our war budget.
Yeah, a little change there.
If we had to fund that from taxes and tax raises, people would be in the streets upset about it. But because we don't feel it, we don't see it come directly out of our paycheck, it makes it a lot easier to send that money overseas, whether it's for military or foreign aid. Foreign aid, I know Ron Paul called it, we're stealing from poor people in this country to give to rich people in poor countries.
Yeah, and he's 100% accurate.
Why are we giving foreign aid to any country?
Yeah,
Israel,
when you have starving
Palestine,
people here.
Ukraine, Russia, Cuba, whatever. Like,
What foreign policy have we ever had that was a success?
we have $36 trillion in debt, I think now. Like, you can't save the world if you can't pay your mortgage. And that's where we're at. We need to lead by example as a country. We got to be that shining city on the hill and show how free market capitalism works, not this bastardization of what we have now of the lefties are not actually too far off when they talk about fascism, not necessarily Trump and all that stuff that they're pointing to, but we're not too far off from the merger of corporation and state, and that's
I know.
traditional definition of fascism. And maybe they are getting a little bit closer with
Public-private sector.
this public-private sector ownership.
That chip factory, that chip
I know a lot of
production
conservatives
bill.
aren't happy with that.
I don't know. Not at all. And it's hard because, I don't know, it's hard. So Uncle Trump couldn't, he's in a position where he couldn't stop the flow of money for that CHIPS Act bill. And there might be more than this. I'm only familiar with this one. But the CHIP Act bill that Biden did. And so he couldn't shut...
senators made money on?
Oh, of course, yeah. Oh, yeah, I have the Pelosi stock watch. So he couldn't stop the money there, had to keep going. So what do? Do you just keep paying it out and get nothing in return? And I'm hoping my naivete, or however you say it, that I'm naive, but how else do you do it except take a portion, a stock share in that company, so at least you can get a return on the investment? And maybe I'm a fool. I'm hoping it's just the one time, and you're not going to just educate me right now and say, well, it's happened here, here, and here. I'd rather live in my fantasy world for the moment.
No, I heard there was one more they were looking at. Well, who knows?
But it's still wrong, 100%. But what do you do?
Yeah, maybe it's the same thing as the tariffs. As a matter of policy, tariffs aren't good economic policy. But Trump's kind of negotiating in public with this, and I mean, if just because it's good, not good policy, why should Americans be paying these tariffs if it's not at least reciprocal or whatnot? We shouldn't. The U.S. taxpayer shouldn't be fleeced based on other countries' tariffs and our agreements. So. He seems like he did a good job in negotiating these tariffs and bringing in revenue. Hopefully all the tariff revenue can go towards our debt and bring down our debt.
100%.
But a lot of these figures, the Doge numbers, the tariff numbers, are still just like drops in the bucket for what we're just not serious as a country about tackling our U.S. national debt.
Where are we at? 14 trillion? No, I don't. I think it's
Like
30.
36 or 37.
Holy shit.
You can go to usdebtclock.com and it tells you exactly, and per state, per person, what your debt share is, what your kid's debt share
Bet I
is.
can't afford it.
Yeah, I mean, this is how empires fall. It's either internally or externally, and
Open borders.
we're doing
and
both.
debt.
Yeah, we're open borders, military inventionism, spread thin. We're in debt. Happens to other countries. Look at the Weimar Republic. We were taught in school about the wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah. Venezuela, they opened the
Venezuela,
zoos and ate the animals.
Zimbabwe, they have a $1 trillion note. You can buy that on eBay. It's worth about a bus fare. So that's what we have now. We're looking at inflation, and then once hyperinflation hits in, it can get really scary really fast.
On a different note, so you've been out stumping for David Jones.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
Yeah. I've known David since I got into Maine on the Ron Paul campaign back in 2011. His son was a staffer out in Colorado who's from Maine, and Dave was a Ron Paul delegate and was there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. He was a Ron Paul delegate, and he was at the infamous 2012 Maine Republican Convention. There's about 3,000 people there, delegates there, and it was a really close vote, but the majority of people there were for Ron Paul, and we were able to get all the delegates, and that turned into a whole other controversy down in Tampa at the RNC, and they tried not to seat our delegation, and became a big fight. And since, Dave has been all in on the Trump train, helping him in 2016 with the Making Maine Great Again Super PAC. He did with Linda Bean. They bought ads and signs and kind of supplemented the campaign's effort here in Maine. And they got within about 22,000 votes of Trump actually beating Hillary in Maine. And then Gary Johnson, he got more than that difference too. So if you put the Libertarians in with Trump, that was a majority of Mainers in 2016. And so I think people don't, kind of forget how red Maine can be with the right candidate, with the right issue, with the right time, with the right opponent. Hillary Clinton was very just kind of universally disliked.
And then, so David's running for governor, in case you didn't know, David Jones. You're his campaign manager. So you've been traveling the state up and down, back and forth, busy 6-7 days a week, posting, doing all the work, right? All the heavy lifting.
A little bit of everything.
Having fun with it?
Yeah, it's great to get back out there. It's been a while since I've worked on a statewide campaign, probably the vaccine one, and then Breaky against
You were
Angus
part of
King.
the vaccine thing?
I helped the vaccine moms. I was a consultant for them on the signature drive and then into the campaign side as well. It was amazing what
I learned something new every time I
those
talk
moms
to you.
and dads did in 2020, 2019. They collected about 100,000 signatures in 90 days because it's a people's veto because the legislature...
For no dollars, pretty much.
Yeah, the legislature passed that bill that said that you could no longer have a religious or philosophical exemption for your kids to go to school with the vaccines. That law is so terrible. It applies to online schools. It applies to private schools. We don't even have the free association, and then
That's crazy.
It applies to. You can't even delay. Some people just want to stretch out the MMR vaccine. Mumps, measles, rubella. They want to take it and do it. Not all at once. For example, no, you're not allowed to do that either under this law. So these moms and dads got. Not 100,000 signatures in 90 days to put it on the ballot to do a people's veto of a law passed by the legislature. And of course, aspiring Congressman Matt Dunlap, who was Secretary of State at the time, he chose to put us on the Democratic presidential primary ballot. Even though the Constitution, I think in the Maine Constitution, it says the next regular election.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I was going to say, I don't remember seeing it. Now I know why.
I was arguing with him in his office. I said, well, Matt, what what do independents have to vote for in this regular election? What do Republicans have to vote for? And he said, well, the vaccine referendum. That's not how it works. You can't use that as a reason to make it a regular election, like chicken or the egg stuff. So we couldn't really fight that in court. We were kind of out of resources, had to just kind of take the lump, and we Big Pharma came in. I think they spent $400,000 or $600,000 worth of ads.
Nothing. Nothing to them.
Which is nothing to them, and of course the other thing was COVID. We could feel the undertow of COVID come in, and because that was March 3rd was the election, and then I think a couple days later the world shut down. So
Yeah,
we had a lot going against us on that campaign, but I'm definitely proud of the effort that everyone put in, and of the grassroots in that regard. But getting back to it, it's awesome to be able to work in politics in Maine, and so blessed and grateful to see more Maine than a lot of Mainers. Some folks don't get to go to every county and go to different festivals and fairs, and so
eat fried dough and hot dogs and fried onions.
Eat it, yeah. I get steak and cheeses and all that good stuff at the fairs, and
somehow you didn't put on weight.
Yeah, well, the chest down here. Baggy sweatshirt. But yeah, I think Dave Jones is the right guy for the moment. I think we need a businessman in the Blaine House. I think we need executive experience. None of the Democrats are even, close to being, ready for this job or have the experience to do it. And really their fingerprints are all on the bad stuff in Maine. You look at the taxes, the regulations, this is their legacy. So Republicans have a really great opportunity to run as change candidates in this election cycle. Nothing's gotten better over the last 2 years, or the last 4 years, over the last 8 years with Janet Mills.
No, it's way more painful.
How did Democrats run for office while not running against the last 8 years of what they did? And how do they do that while Janet's on a different ballot too? They're gonna have a hard time answering for Maine's economic woes, and so we need a Republican that can, he's not a politician, he's an outsider, but he does have a record, and I think that's really interesting. A lot of people that run as outsiders or businessmen really just have that private sector experience and then come in, not really too involved in politics. But Dave's been involved for 20 years. He's cared. He's been on the radio hosting there with Ray Richardson, and he just has a track record of supporting Republicans and conservative causes that a lot of folks don't. He was down with Trump since day one. He sued. He was one of the plaintiffs suing Janet for the COVID lockdowns.
I didn't know that either.
He's on the plaintiff there. He was a plaintiff against ranked choice voting as well.
Just terrible. You're going to have to face that in the primary.
I had a bill if you remember, to say Republicans should be able to determine how we want to determine our nominee.
I talk about it often.
Private organizations.
Yeah.
The DNC can nominate Kamala from, thin air, not one vote, but Republicans must be forced to use ranked choice voting, I guess, according to Shanna. So, who also, my old bill about the drop boxes came back up because there was some interest in that with the Amazon stuff, and Shanna Bellows was testifying against my bill for cameras on drop boxes. I put that in. I thought I was splitting the difference when I put that one in. I wasn't trying to get rid of drop boxes. Wasn't trying to get rid of absentee
ballot. Just keep an eye on them.
Let's just, these cameras are friggin', $10 storage. The cloud is cheap as hell. It's not going to be a big burden. There's probably already cameras on them. And I thought it was like cut both ways, Republican, Democrat. If somebody wanted to destroy Republican ballots, they can go up to Milford. If someone wanted to destroy Democrat ballots, they go to Portland. And wouldn't it be good to maybe have a video of whoever's putting the firecracker in the drop box?
Yeah.
But, geez Louise, the cabal of leftists came out and acted like instituting Jim Crow.
Which is crazy because I learned a long time ago tall fences make good neighbors. And by that, I mean just safeguards. If you could safeguard something, you're better off because even honest people do stupid shit sometimes. They just do. You know, they're tempted by the moment or whatever, the heat of the moment. And I'm not saying it happens or doesn't happen. I'm just saying a camera watching the Dropbox seems like a pretty benign way to just make sure and offer some sort of peace of mind to a lot of people.
Why do we have signs that say, this area is, monitored by CCTV? Because awareness and a deterrence. And like, I still don't understand who would like not drop a ballot in a Dropbox because there's a camera. That was their argument, right? Not that, they tried to say, oh, it's going to be a mandate for the cost for the towns. Okay, whatever. Like their argument was that this isn't worth it and it would suppress the vote. And it's like,
that's how I feel.
Next, they'll say going there in person is which is why we have an absentee, and then they'll say, well, paper ballots are too much. We should just vote by our phone, and
As I was doing some homework on that too, I just learned, I did not know this until a couple of weeks ago, and maybe it was said. I've been fighting some health issues, and I think I'm on the other side of it. But if you're 65 and older, or collect Social Security disability, you have your absentee ballot mailed to you for perpetuity. You don't have to ask for it. It just comes to you after the first time per request. It just comes to you. As of December 1st, 2025, that's going to be true for every Maine citizen or any Mainer, any person in Maine. So college kids, potentially immigrants, potentially you and me, potentially, would be able to have a ballot mailed to us absentee forever. And then you could also say, well, I don't feel like doing the absentee. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Go do it in person, but you still have an absentee ballot at the house.
Well, there'd be a record of that, the request. But even setting that aside, it doesn't, take a rocket scientist to see the issues that could arise when we're just mailing ballots for every election, even if they're not requested. So yeah, you're right. I think this came last in the 132nd. I think 131st, they passed seniors being able to do the ongoing absentee status. And then the last session, they expanded that, I think, to everyone. And
which it went right over my head.
This year, I think. So I don't really mind people requesting an absentee ballot, but they should have to request it at every election. I don't think that is suppression. I don't think that's too much of an obstacle.
I don't understand if you can go in and request one, why you can't just... I have an issue with the whole voting season and the absentee. I can understand if you have a need and you need to get an absentee. That's fine. I'm good with it. Now, when I tried to get an absentee deployed, I had to turn in my orders signed by a commander, so forth and so on. UCAVA, a little different. However, I don't think it should be this easy. You go in, you show your ID. I know there's a contentious issue, voter ID, but you show an ID, okay, you want an absent. You shouldn't be on the rolls, the big book that the poll workers are looking at. You should just be removed from it. I'm sorry, I don't have you here. You must have either gotten an absentee or you haven't registered. You'll need to go see registration. Registration goes, no, I have you here listed as an absentee recipient. Go do your absentee. It's fine. And then we don't need 30 days to vote. We don't need a season to vote. You need a season to hunt.
Makes it hard to campaign, and practically it sucks from the campaign side of things. When
needs
election
a month
day is 30
to
days
show
long.
up at City Hall?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to do 4 days? You want to come up with some middle ground? But 30 days?
Well, we ran into it on some campaigns, like the Breaky one. We were pushing Angus King for debate so much. We were, calling him chicken. He refused to debate Breaky or the Democrat. Finally, he agreed to them. We had a couple of them on TV. They were all like the last 10 days.
Yeah.
So then the other issue is with the absentee voting when like a scandal happens, right? Somebody dies or a scandal happens. Somebody
Some
says something
ballots show up
dumb.
at somebody's house.
or even just something with the candidate that I voted for this guy and I didn't know that this comes out. I didn't know this was true. I want to change my vote. Well, you can't. Sorry. So, things happen at the last minute of a campaign too, and some people vote for the person they didn't want to after learning new information.
See, and this is why you're a good statesman, and I'm just like, no, it's just wrong. You're much more well thought out.
Thank you, Quinn.
Yeah, for sure. 30 days is too much. I don't understand why it has to be that complicated. You should be able to make it down. Voter ID makes sense to me. I don't understand why that's an issue. I don't know anybody who doesn't have an ID. I just don't.
It offers free ID. Their argument's pretty weak, and they're just making it about absentee voting. And, the reality is that question 1 just tinkers with it a little bit. They're acting like no one's ever going to be able to vote early ever again.
It messes with that December 1st absentee.
It stops the ongoing thing, which I think probably majority of people can understand that. And it shaves 2 days off of the absentee voting the week before to give the clerks more time to work.
So 28 instead of 30.
Yeah, and I think you still have no excuse in between. If you really needed to, you could still, because I'm not sure if it gets rid of that part or not in question 1. Plus, the legislature can just do what it wants. When they come back, we could pass voter ID and they could repeal it. They have the majority.
Yeah.
I don't think they would do that, but they could tinker with this other stuff. They tinker with other initiatives. They don't act like it's sacrosanct. I mean, question 1 of cannabis was supposed to be regulated by the agriculture, and they changed that right away. So we'll see. But the Dems are just gaslighting about it and acting like the world's going to fall and we're throwing Granny off the cliff with voting if we pass question 1. And it's really just they're gaslighting Mainers on this ballot initiative with their campaign and the way they're going about it.
They must not have a lot of money in it, because I don't see a lot of no on one signs.
They don't have any grassroots, but they got a trough of money that came in from out of state. So you're going to start seeing a bunch of TV and digital ads, I bet, starting real soon, probably tomorrow. And they've outraised proponents by a bunch. So we're going against the big money here on this one. And hopefully question 1 passes despite that.
Well, with that being said, I appreciate your time, David, and I look forward to talking to you again.
All right. Thanks, Quentin.